All right, so what we're going to be doing today is that we are going to work through some two-step equation word problems. At this point, you guys are an expert on how to solve two-step equations, but to make your lives a little bit more complicated, we have to add some word problems in there. So please make sure you put your name, number, date, period on top. Our learning objective for today is that we will use our knowledge of solving two-step equations to create two-step equation problems from word problems. And our language objective is that today we will be able to identify repeating numbers and one-time numbers. So at this point, like I said earlier, I am fairly confident that you guys know how to solve two-step equations. So take a look at these two examples right here. So the first thing you should do is always draw your line down. The first thing is to get rid of anything that's around your variable. So you'll notice that there is a 10 and a 3. The 10 is attached to the variable, but then 3 is around our variable. So that's what we want to get rid of first. So I'm going to subtract 3 here. And if I do it on the left side, I must do it on the right side as well. This 10x is going to drop. This 3 is going to go away because this plus 3 minus 3 is the opposite of each other. And what I have is 33 minus 3, which equals to 30. This now becomes a one-step equation. If a number is right next to each other like this, it is automatically multiplication. So that means the opposite of multiplication is going to be division. So we're going to divide 10 on both sides, divide 10 right here. This gets rid of your 10. All you have left is x equals 2. 30 divided by 10 is going to be equal to 3. In the end, please make sure that you always check your work. And for those of you that are having trouble checking your work, take a look at what I'm doing here. The first thing is I'm going to write down my original problem. 10x plus 3 equals to 33. What I'm going to do now is that because I found out that x is equal to 3, every time I see an x now, I'm going to replace that x with the number 3. And everything else, I'm just going to copy it down. So this 10, I'm going to copy. Instead of copying the x, I'm going to copy 3. And I'm going to copy everything else after that. What you're going to do now is that you're going to simplify. So what I have here is 10 plus 3, which equals to 30. Copy everything else down again. And then 30 plus 3, which equals to 33. 33 on the other side, so that means 3 is our solution here. Let's take a look at our second example. Again, draw my line down. I'm going to get rid of anything that is around my variable, which is this minus 14. The opposite of a minus 14 is plus 14 here, plus 14 here. What drops down is my x divided by 3. The 14s will go away. 5 plus 14 is going to equal to 19. I have a one-step equation now, which is x divided by 3. The opposite of division is multiplication. Multiply 3 here, multiply 3 here. What you're going to have is x is equal to 19 times 3, which equals to 57. Make sure you do your check. Again, write down our original problem. We found out that x is equal to 57, so that means every time I see an x, I'm going to write 57 instead. 57, copy everything else down. 57 divided by 3 is going to be equal to 19 minus 14, which equals to 5. And then 19 minus 14 is equal to 5, and 5 is equal to 5. So today, what we're going to focus on is being able to create two-step equations from word problems. So for all these word problems, I'm probably going to use a similar format to over and over again. So hopefully you guys get the idea of what's happening here. So let's take a look at this example. You have $500 in your savings account and you want to get a cell phone. There is a one-time connection fee of $50, and the plan you're interested in getting will cost $75 a month. How many months of service can you get before you need to deposit more money in your savings account? Right now, I know there's a lot of information and you don't know where to start. But what we're going to do is that you're always going to have a table like this for every single word problem that you do. So these are the steps to creating two-step equations from word problems. So number one is to define the variable, which means what do we want to know? Usually the very last sentence of your question is what you're trying to find out. So I am going to highlight this right here. All right, so that's usually number one because that tells us what we're trying to find out. Number two is to determine the constant. So what that means is what is the one-time number. So you're going to notice that in all of these problems, there's usually three numbers. One of them is going to be your total amount of something. One number is going to be talking about, okay, what's that one-time number that is only happening one time and it's not repeating itself. And you're going to find another number, which is number three. What is your rate? What is the repeating number? So we look for keywords such as each and per, or something that represents, like, it's repeating. All right, and the last one is write an equation, solve, check, and write a complete sentence. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take a look at our very first example again, and we're going to go through these 4 steps. So number one, it says define the variable. What do we want to know? So like I told you, you take a look at the very last sentence to figure out what are we trying to find out. So the last sentence, it says, how many months of service can you get before you need to deposit more money in your savings account? So what we want to know, we want to find out how many months of service. We want to find out how many months of service we can get. All right, so that's what we're trying to find out. Number two is determine the constant. So we're trying to find out what's that one-time number. All right, so what I want you to do right now is take a look at the 3 numbers that I give you in this problem. You have 500, you have 50, and you have 75. So what you want to do is take a look at the words around those numbers to see if that's going to help you figure out what that number means. So right now it says you have $500 in your savings account, and so there's not really anything that tells me like, okay, that's a one-time fee. My next one though is 50. All right, taking a look at the words around it, it says there is a one-time connection fee of $50. All right, so this is a pretty big indication that 50 is our one-time number. So that means I'm going to put $50 right here. Number 3 is asking what's our rate. So what's repeating? Look for the word each, the word per, or something that repeats. We are now down to 575. So let's take a look at what we have here. For $75, it says the plan that you're interested in getting will cost $75 a month. Okay, now what I want you to also take a look at is what's our variable. We want to find out how many months of service we can get. So another way of figuring out what our rate is going to be, it usually goes along with what our variable is going to be. And if we are trying to look for months when it comes to our variable, 75 is going to be our repeating number because we have $75 a month and we're trying to figure out how many months of service we could get. So 75 is going to be our repeating number. The only number that we don't have anything for is the 500. So that's automatically going to be our total. So our total is going to be on one side of the equation, and then what we're going to do is we're going to build off everything else with these here. So what we're going to do is write an equation. An equation needs to have an equal sign to it. We already indicated that 500 is our total, so that means 500 is going to go on one side of my equation, and that's usually going to be on the right side. Now what we want to do is that we're trying to figure out, how do I put 50 into my equation? How am I going to put 75 into my equation? When it comes to your one-time number, what you need to do is just write that number one time. Now 75. 75 is our repeating number, and 75 is talking about months. So what we want to do is that because our variable is talking about months, we're going to attach the variable to the number 75. So that means I'm going to have 75x, and we'll put a plus here. So if you're not sure what operation to put, always put a plus. So this is our equation. 75x plus 50 equals to 500. So now what you're going to do is you're going to solve. Draw your line down. Minus 550 minus 50. What drops down here is your 75x equals to 500 minus 50, which equals to 450 here. This is 75 times x, so that means the opposite of multiplication is going to be division. Divide 75 here. What you're going to have is x equals to 6. So we just created our equation. We just solved it. The next thing we're going to do is that we're going to check it. So number one is write down your original problem. 75x plus 50 equals to 500. We found out that x is equal to 6. So that means instead of writing x, I'm going to put 6 instead, and I'm going to copy everything else down. Copy the 75. Instead of x, write 6 plus 50 here equals to 500. Now you simplify it down. 75 times 6 is going to equal to 450 plus, copy everything else down again, equals to 500. 450 times 50 is equal to 500, which equals to 500 there. We're good. The very last thing we're going to do is write a complete sentence based on our answer here. So we wanted to find out how many months of service we can get. So we found out that x is going to be 6, so that means we can get 6 months of service. And that's pretty much it.